I don't know which take was bolder, Derek Carr, Justin Herbert. I'm not even gonna mention Calvin Ridley because I got a bone to pick with you. I really, really, really got a bone to pick with you. But
Oh
let's
man,
start
I
with
thought you were gonna get up and walk away when I said Calvin Ridley.
yes, yes. I don't even want to talk about him right now. When we talk about Slot Red, let's talk about. Welcome to Fantasy Vibes, brought to you by Reel1'sProductions, exclusively on YouTube. Before we get started and into this experience of a show that we have planned for you, I myself, Moon Vibes, would like to welcome you to our channel. We don't know how you came across our content, but we want to take some time to honor you and spread some peace and love your way. Hopefully, you're staying quarantine clean and safe during these times. Let me be real with you. Only roughly 5.3% of people who watch our content actually subscribe to our channel. Of course, we want you to subscribe to our channel. However, what's in it for you? Real content, strip club aesthetics, maybe some laughs, hilarious commentary, sports debates with dramatic elements, but overall, just plain genuine vibes. We created this with you in mind. And if you want to support us in any way, shape, or form, please subscribe to our channel. But not only subscribe, join the conversations. We would not only love the engagement, but it's a platform where all sides and different opinions on the spectrum are respected and valued. We want to create that personal connection with our audience, and you can be a part of that next wave of different. Welcome to Fantasy Vibes, presented by Reel1's Productions, with your host, Moon Vibes, and my co host, Nomi the Homie.
This is Fantasy Vibes Dream Team. This is the part of the show where we're going to tell you who we think is going to be the best start at every position. Just like a fantasy team, we're going to have one quarterback, two running backs, and two wide receivers, along with the flex. The flex is going to be our choice, either a running back or a quarterback. I'm Nomi the Homie. As you've met, this is Moon Vibes. And we are going to get started with quarterback. My quarterback of the week this week is Russell Wilson.
The what?
Russell
Russ?
Wilson has been playing absolutely out of his mind. They've been letting him actually carry the team on offense for the first time in a long time, it feels like. And it's been awesome. Uh, Last week against Atlanta, he completed 88.6% of his
Why you
passes.
want to bring my Falcons into this? why, why you had to do
Sorry
us
about
like
your
that?
Falcons, though,
Hashtag
but
let
they
Russ
kind of
cook
look
dirty
like barbecue
birds.
chicken at the end of the day.
Oh
Uh,
gosh, no.
So Russell Wilson ended up cooking them, and before that, cooked New England for 5 touchdowns and only one interception. He was still completing 75% of his passes in that game too.
Automatic.
He doesn't miss, and he's been incredibly successful. Watch him to keep doing that.
Hot take. Is Russ the MVP so far, 2 weeks into the season?
So far, if we're choosing an MVP 2 weeks into a season, but it is only 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's true. It's only 2 weeks. We got to factor in other honorable mentions like Aaron Rodgers, who's playing out of his mind right now. Also, for those people, some people might in Cowboys Nation, they might be like Dak Prescott is the MVP, or if you go to Bills Mafia, because we got some Bills Mafia fans in here, they'll probably tell you that Josh Allen is the MVP right now. But
That's the
up
issue
there,
with only 2 weeks of statistics, though. With only 2 weeks, anybody can pop off. We've seen
ex-
we've seen
exactly.
players make a career out of 2 weeks and make that be them having a deep roster spot for the next 5 years because they were really good for those 2 weeks.
Hey,
So
right.
so far in 2 weeks, yes, he's the MVP, but 2 weeks is not a season.
That's facts. That's true facts. So you started off with Russ, quarterback one. It's kind of like a DraftKings type of format. So if you play daily fantasy, this will be perfect for you. We're starting our lineups. I'm staying in the NFC West, and I'm gonna talk about Kyler Murray. Number one, he's going at a rate of about $6,800 on DraftKings. He has 516 yards, two touchdowns, two interceptions, 30.2 fantasy points per game. And the best thing about it, you mentioned this earlier, but I smell I smell barbecue chicken. He's going up against the Detroit Lions secondary this
Awful,
week.
awful defensive lines.
But peep this. If you have people in Detroit right now, they be like, we're not awful. We Detroit ranks 11th against quarterbacks. But guess what, Detroit Lions fans? I don't want to rain down on y'all parade. But y'all give up the NFL's worst 32nd and 204 rushing yards a game. That's pathetic. Total yards a game 425.5. NFL ranked 28th. Points a game 31.5 points per game. Mm-mm-mm. Last week, Kyler was 26 out of 38 for 286 yards with a touchdown and interception while rushing for 67 yards and two TDs. This man rushed for two TDs and they won. That's what's most important. They won 30-15 against Washington, who we thought that's going to be a tough game because Washington's D line, but Kyler Murray was just all over the place, just quickly gliding and sliding and profiling and high stepping and all throughout the end zone. But what's more interesting about this game? They got Christian Kirk involved. They got Andy Isabella involved. They got old man Fitz involved. They got your guy D Hop new. They got him involved. But I just look at it like this: if y'all let Aaron Rodgers get loose in y'all let Aaron Jones look like Marshall Falk out there. If y'all let Mitchell Trubisky, Mitch Trubisky, go to work on y'all, what's stopping Kyler Murray from doing that to y'all too? That's my little take on it. But I'll ask you this question: does Kyler Murray have over or under 75 rushing yards this week?
I think he's going to have over 150 rushing yards this week.
Wow.
I think that their entire offense, knowing that the Detroit Lions defense lacks in rushing defense, and that's something that they know too, right? So they're going to be looking for the run. They're going to be trying to stop, especially Kyler Murray, and he's going to be able to throw it over their heads when they do that. And as soon as he does that once, they're going to be on their heels, and he's going to juke and spin his way for a 50-yard run at once.
I said 75. You doubled that and said that's not good enough,
I
Slim.
did double that. I think he's going to go off in the run game. I think that he's been able to show that he can do that over and over again. And now that he's going against a defense who doesn't know how to stop that run, I think
Mhm.
he's going to go off. I definitely think he's going to have at least one really long run, at least 40 yards.
All right, cool. So, speaking of 40-yard runs and running, we should say, we swiftly changed the topic to running backs. So, I guess I'll go first and I'll pass it over to you. So let's take a trip to Philadelphia and talk about Miles Sanders, who's currently going at a price of 6,400 right now, and he's playing the Joe Burrow-led Cincinnati Bengals with what? No offensive line, and he had 20 attempts, 95 yards, one touchdown, and 21.1 fantasy points per game. I'll take that if this is your first game coming back since we've seen you this season. Um, some little stats about Cincinnati before I pass it off to you. Cincinnati ranks 28th against running backs. Pitiful. They also rank 30th in the NFL with 185 yards per game given up to running backs. They're kind of better with total yards, with 22nd in total yards. But like I said before, Nomi, this is the same Cincinnati Bengals team that gave up the Lamar Jackson spin move. Why are we so shocked that Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt went to work last week? I see nothing different from Miles Sanders this week. Now, after missing week one, he picked up right where he left off last season, had a big game in his 2020 debut. It seemed like their offense was coming together and had more life to it with Miles Sanders out there. A lot of that could be said for the improved offensive line, but tell me your take on that, and I'll pass it off to you. But the most thing before I tell you, did you know that he had 7 targets out of the backfield?
That's not bad, and receiving is really important, especially considering most leagues are PPR leagues now. Uh, I think it's a little bit too early on that Sanders train, honestly. I'm a fan of his. However, it takes 1 week to get tape. So defenses actually have some type of tape and something to study before they go into that game. I
It don't
don't think that
matter.
they're going to be able to hold him well. I don't know
Mhm.
if he's in for a really big game. The guys that I'm looking at for running back are kind of expected to have those big games almost always. The first dude I'm going to talk about is Alvin Kamara. Alvin
Wow.
Kamara has been on fire, it feels like, for years, and the last 2 weeks hasn't really been an exception. He has minimum 12 attempts on the ground, and his yardage isn't great there, but he has at least one rushing touchdown every single week. However, catching the ball is kind of where he's at right now. He's getting at least 8 targets a game, and he's averaging over 10 yards per catch.
He's
10
nasty.
yards per catch.
He's nasty.
He's nasty. And the yardage that you can get after catch, especially from a running back in PPR leagues, is awesome and incredibly helpful, especially in those tight quarterbacks, tight halfback situations. You can always trust him to go off.
So random hot take. I mentioned him and I talked about him in last week's episode of I'm Locked Up and Drew Brees. Are you sold on him right now, or do you just think that he's just holding on to the littlest sliver that he has left and trying to just juice it all out while he has the chance?
I think he's a great quarterback that still can perform. I think the issue is Michael Thomas being gone. The
Mm.
statistic that you actually gave me, Michael Thomas has been just about, or more than half of their offensive production in a long time, and he is over 30% of Drew Brees' fantasy points. Is
Thirty
that right?
percent, 30.7%, ladies and gentlemen, of Drew Brees' fantasy points are attributed to Michael Thomas.
And Michael
It's
Thomas
crazy.
is hurt right now. So, like, I think that that's kind of the issue.
Mhm.
When he comes back, I think that everything else will be better for their offense. However, it kind of makes you worry when their offense relies on one person.
This is facts. So since you gave me facts, give me more facts and tell me who your second running back is that you're starting in your lineup for your dream team this
My
week.
second running back is on a team that's struggling a little bit on offense right now, and that is Dalvin Cook of the Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, wow.
Now,
Wow.
I know that that doesn't seem like a great pick, but he's another running back that has at least one touchdown per game right now.
Mhm.
Along with that, he's getting at least 12 carries a game. And he's not receiving the ball a lot, but he's getting at least 2 targets every single week. I think that he is able to pop off in different weeks, and I think this week is going to be his time to go.
It's kind of
Go
funny
big
that
or
you
go
say
home.
that. It's funny that you say that because coming up later, I'll actually be talking a little bit more about Dalvin. But my hot take is this: is his production as far as his rushing yardage. Does that concern you going forward, or is that just something that you're just like, nah, like it's okay. He's making up for it. He's giving me production when it comes to touchdowns.
I think that there's still an offense that is trying to come out of the quarantine. We're
Mm.
seeing more and more that offenses and defenses too haven't really been able to gel perfectly. They were missing the practice over the summer along with the preseason. They missed a lot of connections and ways to create that chemistry together. So I think that that's the biggest issue in Minnesota right now, and I think that that gets remedied in a few weeks. They're still a good football team, and I still think that they have the opportunity to produce.
Over under for Kirk Cousins. Over under 15 picks this year.
I'm going to say under. The
Wow.
first couple of weeks don't look that great, but I think he's a good quarterback. I think that he needs to get. Sometimes quarterbacks get complacent, and I think that it's possible that he spent the summer on the beach, and that's okay. But he needs to get back in the back in
Hey,
the playbook and back into understanding uh, what he's going against.
Kirk Cousins. I know you're a man of faith, man, and I know you're not scared of this coronavirus, but the way you've been playing, man, it looks like you're scared of these defenses. I'm gonna say over and way over. I'll say like at least 20. at least 20 picks. I think it's one of those years for him, and I'm gonna be out on a ledge on that for real. But I guess we go to me. It's up to me. My halfback, my second one I'm gonna go with is we'll go to Chicago. David Montgomery. I watched that game they had against the New York Giants this past week, I should say. It was very uh concerning, not for the Bears, but for the rest of the league. If they figure out and Matt Nagy figures out, like, hey, like I gotta just swallow my pride and just give him the ball, like, because he reads and he works in the system so well. They run a stretch type system, so he's able to just stick his foot in the ground and just go. I love him in this situation, and I not only love him in this situation, but I love his price. He's going for 5,700 right now on DraftKings. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? I have to take my own personal feelings out of it because I am an Atlanta Falcons fan. But listen, we can't stop the run and we can't stop the pass. He has 29 attempts on the year. He has 146 yards, 73 yards per game, one touchdown, 15.1 fantasy points per game. But peep Atlanta's rankings, Nami. Just take a look at this. Atlanta ranks 30th against running backs. They are 31st in the NFL in passing yardage a game with 372 yards a game. They are ranked number ninth in rushing yards a game, so 104.5. And that's kind of like, yo, why would you pick David Montgomery if they rank number ninth? I'll get to that. Total yardage, they give up 476.5 yardage a game, and they give up the highest points per game with 39.0 points per game. That's ranked last in the league, Nomi.
That one
Last
must hurt a
in
little
the
bit.
last in the league, Nomi. But for the first time in his career, David Montgomery exceeded 5 yards per rushing attempt, and he was frequently able to get in space and make defenders miss this past week. In addition, he's targeted out of the backfield. He was out targeted his backfield mate Tariq Cohen for the second week in a row. And it would appear that he's a player on the coaching staff is preparing to lean on as we get into the rest of the season. The reason why I'm playing David Montgomery in my second spot is kind of the same reason why I'm playing Miles Sanders. 7 targets out of the backfield for Miles Sanders, and David Montgomery actually scored this past weekend on a sick play where Mitch Trubisky rolled out all the way to his right and just dumped it off to to David Montgomery, and he did what he does. And I see him doing that against my Atlanta Falcons secondary, who just don't seem like they can stop anybody right now, whether that is Dak Prescott or anybody. So that's who I'm going as my top running back option. With my dual running backs, Miles Sanders, Montgomery, you have Dalvin Cook and Kamara. I guess we're off to the wide receivers now, and you can start us off with your number one wide receiver that you're going with.
I really like what you said about choosing your players based on their ability to pop off. And I think that receiving running backs have the opportunity to have so many more points than we expect them to.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if a dude has like 8 receptions a game, that's an automatic 8 points, and you're looking at usually at least about 50 yards.
Exactly.
So that alone, along with that touchdown pop ability, gives you almost a 20-point running back immediately, which is awesome. For wide receivers, though, I think that Buffalo has been playing pretty well. The defenses that they've been going against the last couple of weeks haven't exactly been A1, which is why I'm not completely sold on Josh Allen. However, I still think that they have some real ballers there, starting with Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs has glue on his hands. That dude can catch just about anything, and he has been playing out of his mind. We're looking at least 8 receptions per game and averaging over 10 yards per reception. Easy money, throw him the ball and get lots of yards for it. He's going to help you out in lots of ways. He can run the ball. He can do just about anything you need.
So my question to you is this: the matchup reports haven't been announced yet, so we don't know who will be guarding who yet. Wide receiver cornerback matches up. However, we do know that the Rams have Jalen Ramsey, who just got paid. We'll talk about him later in the show. But does it worry or concern you at all that he might be matching up for at least about, let's say, 33% of the time against Ramsey? Does that nervous that make you nervous? Is it like, okay, he's still going to get his? They're talking about
No,
Stephon
not
Diggs.
really. Stephon Diggs is a player that has been consistently producing for years. He has an injury risk, which is kind of hard and need to look out for, but I think that he has the ability to still be able to find his gaps even on a great defender like Jalen Ramsey.
That is really great insight. I'll take that. You answered that question pretty well. I can't even have a comeback to you right now. I'll just save it to my Vibes pick later. I guess my wide receiver one I'm gonna go with, and I struggle with this because there's a lot of good wide receivers in that 5,000 to 6,000 range that I'm interested in. However, I ended up going with Scary Terry McLaurin out of Ohio State by way of the Washington football team. So they go
He's
up against the
looking
Cleveland,
good right now.
looking good. Like, why he's going up against Cleveland. He has a price of 5,900 on the season. He has 12 receptions, 186 yards, 93 yards per game, one touchdown, 19.8 yards average, right? But he only has one touchdown. Let's just say he gets into the end zone once. That's boosting his floor up even higher. So they're going into what I was talking about with the running backs of that big play capability of, hey, he might give you, even if he has a solid floor, he still might give you this boom that you're not expecting. And it kind of happened last week when we kind of said, hey, he's going up against Patrick Peterson, so you don't need to start him. And then look what he did. He was Dwayne Haskins' most targeted players on the team, other than Logan Thomas. So that's going to be interesting. Cleveland, they rank 23rd against wide receivers. Looking at their defense as a glance, what worries me and interests me as well is the fact that they average 34 points per game. They give it up. That's 31st in the league. Now, with Terry, he caught a fourth quarter pass from Dwayne Haskins on a slant route. It took it 24 yards for Washington's first touchdown, but McLaurin was the team's most dangerous weapon all day long. And he should see high volume. That's another reason why I'm picking him. High volume receiver. And if Joe Burrow and the receivers that they have, besides AJ Green, because AJ Green, you got to see me, bro. Because me and you, we got beef, man. We got beef because I'm tired of drafting you on my team, man. And you can't give me. Never mind. I'm not gonna talk about him. Tyler Boyd can rack
I
up
feel
seven.
that though. He's on my team right now and he's riding the bench this week.
AJ. If Tyler Boyd, AJ Green, T Huggins in the gang can rack up about Tyler Boyd has 7 catches for 72 yards and a score. I just gotta hope Terry McLaurin can do the same for me and give me, that type of vibes.
I
But
think against the Browns, you're looking at a team that has the pieces to be successful, but has never been able to find the ability to be successful.
mhm.
Uh, I think that you can play just about anybody on a team against them. The Washington football team has been struggling a little bit on offense, but I don't think that this team is capable of stopping them.
Absolutely. Hey, Ron Rivera, get the boys right. we gotta get a win, and I'm not even a Washington football team fan. Hey Terry, I'm rooting for you this weekend though. Like, and speaking of another person I'm rooting for who just torched my Falcons. I'm not talking about Amari Cooper, my next receiver, and I'm interested. I could have went with Amari Cooper, but watching that game on Sunday, heartbreak. I'm still trying to recover, ladies and gentlemen. It's heartbreaking. But listen, CD Lamb is going to be a problem in this league. And it's going to happen sooner than we think. Let's just tell you the stats alone. This man has
Absolutely.
11 receptions, 165 yards, 82.5 yards per game. He still hasn't scored yet, but he's giving you 15.7 points per game. That's ridiculous. Now they go up against Seattle this week. Seattle ranks 32nd against wide receivers. We just seen Julian Edelman. Jules, he went crazy this past week. Gave you a career game, and he did so in the midst of being banged up. We don't have any injury designations for CD Lamb. He's coming to the game perfectly healthy. Seattle, they averaged 415 yards a game that they give up. That's last in the NFL. They average that's passing yards. Total yards, they have 485 yards a game. That's the worst in the NFL. But where it concerns me, and this is where I'm going to justify my pick, they rank number two in rushing yards allowed in the game with 69.5. So everybody is saying Zeke going to eat and Zeke's going to eat, but it doesn't show that. We saw the game, and the Patriots struggled to run the ball. We saw Cam put out a great day stat wise passing, but this rookie receiver who's contributed on enormous plays, and he had a number of gut punching plays against my Falcons, but he was a part of Amari Cooper and CD Lamb. They both were torching, and I could see that happening again against Seattle in a high scoring game. What is your gut feeling on this game? And before you answer that, over under, do you think CD Lamb and Amari Cooper over under 20 targets this week from Dak Prescott
Combined, over.
combined?
Absolutely. I think that they're both going to get. See, that's the thing with really good number two wide receivers. A lot of the time you see really big production out of them that you don't see out of the number one, which you can kind of see in Atlanta right now.
With
They've been able
Calvin.
to lock up Julio a little bit more, but Calvin Ridley has been eating. And
Yes.
I think that we're looking at the same type of situation with the Cowboys. CD Lamb has the opportunity to take away, excuse me, Amari Cooper takes away the number one defender for CD Lamb, which gives him the opportunity to go off against the number two, especially because he's a newer player and they don't have a lot of tape on him and they don't know how to understand him yet. I think that he has the ability to go off in ways that nobody understands this year.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. And side note, I drafted Michael Gallup in like a late, like probably like the sixth or seventh round, thinking that he was just going to provide for me and this is going to be a steal. Michael Gallup, where you at, bro? Where you at? Because your production is not there. It's not there. But other side note, Amari Cooper has been a target machine. This just these two games. I know you just said earlier, two games doesn't say a lot. It's not the whole entree, but it's a sample. But I'm excited to see what the Dallas Cowboys do this season as far as their offense. And then we lead to our flex position. Who do you have for your flex gnome? And go into detail about why you picked this as your flex.
So I still got a wide receiver left. My wide receiver that I have left is DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre
Oh,
Hopkins
Nuke.
is going absolutely nuts. I think he got traded away and he feels like he has something to prove, and he was already the best in the league, in my opinion. I
Mm-hmm.
think he comes out and he shows out against every single team in the league, and I'm excited to see more of him. With the flex, though, I I think that somebody that is a little bit more slept on because they're on the Browns is Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt has been able to
Mm.
consistently perform this year, and his fantasy output has been really consistent. I think if you need somebody that you can trust to plug in every single week, Kareem Hunt is up there. So that's my pick
Yes.
for the flex.
I really, really, really love that pick. Love the pick. I actually love Kareem Hunt not only as a running back, but as a receiver. It's kind of in the same mode we were just talking about earlier. I think he can give you more receiving output than Nick Chubb can, even though Nick Chubb is a more reliable runner. But that two-headed monster, I think that they both get opportunities to show out and show out big.
They're
Who
able
is
to
it?
show out in the ways that they are best at showing out, like
Mm-hmm.
Chubb it through the middle and Kareem Hunt being able to catch those screens and find those gaps. I think that their biggest issue is like with their defense and the ability to slow down any other team, really.
Yes, that's true. Do you think injuries play a lot into that, or is it a situation where you just don't believe in their defense as much as people try to hype them up to be?
I think of the Rams whenever I try to think about how to fix a defense, right? They
Mm-hmm.
didn't have an ability to get consistent defensive output, and then they hired an old defensive head or an assistant as an assistant coach, but they hired somebody who's really into defense, somebody who understands defense, and
Mm-hmm.
they gave him the entire defensive side of the ball, and they said, "Go crazy, do your thing,
Yeah,
make this team good." And I
right.
think that that's what the Browns are lacking: a coach like that.
That's a great point, Naomi. That's an amazing point. Speaking of points, you probably got me on these point system right now with this lineup because I was just not expecting you to bring these names out of the woodshed like this. Now I got to compete with you with the flex position. So I'm torn. I have actually two people that I have for my flex, but I'm gonna go with the one that I feel like is just on my gut and is just in my heart, pulling on my heartstrings. This guy was a top 10 pick at one point. He was a top 10 pick. He's number 84. He's on the Tennessee Titans. He's going for a salary of 5,200. And his next game is against the Minnesota Vikings and Kirk Cousins, who keeps just throwing picks to the other team. Currently in the season, he has 10 receptions, 137 yards, 68.5 yards a game, one touchdown, and 16.4 yards for 16.4 fantasy points per game. I'm talking about the one and only Corey Davis, who has been balling up so far this year. Now, his first game was better than his second, but his first game he didn't score, and that was up in Denver. His second game he scored, but it's kind of like that was his floor game because we didn't see the amount of volume that we hoped to get from him. And then Tannehill just kind of just went crazy. Tannehill was just completing passes to everybody and their mother. Like, hey, you want to ball? Hey, you want to ball too? Like, hey, just pass it. But what makes me interested about this matchup is we're going to give us Minnesota. Minnesota ranks 31st against wide receivers. I smell barbecue chicken. Like they rank 28th in passing yardage allowed, 283.5 yards a game. In rushing yards allowed, 154.5 yards a game. NFL ranked 20, that's 28th. Total yards a game, 438. That's 29th in the NFL. Points per game, 33.5. That's 30th in the NFL. Like at the end of the day, I think Tannehill is gonna go crazy this week. I think we keep sleeping on Tannehill. Meanwhile, Tannehill's like, okay, all right, yeah, and he just continues to ball out. But with this game, with AJ Brown ruled out for week 2, Corey Davis, that is, only tied Jonnu Smith, your guy Jonnu, and for second on the team in targets as a part of a balanced attack for Tennessee. Now, I wanted Derrick Henry to get more touches. However, their game script worked out perfectly for them. But like they ran the ball 34 times on Sunday, while 5 different players posted at least 2 catches on Ryan Tannehill's 18 receptions. Now, he's off to an encouraging start this year. I wish him nothing but the best, and especially for my fantasy team. But I'm starting him this week, and I'm starting him with confidence just because I'm banking on the fact that Minnesota's defense is just as horrible as it says on paper. And I'm banking on the fact that he can, if his floor is what we've seen in week 2, and his ceiling is what we've seen at week 3, and if he gives me anything in between, I'll be happy as that production from my flex. Kind of like what you're saying with like Kareem Hunt. Like if Kareem Hunt goes crazy like he did against Cincinnati, that's going to be like ridiculous to handle as far as a lineup.
I really
So
like that pick too. I really like Corey Davis. As a Marcus Mariota fan, I always kind of paid attention to the wide receivers and tight ends that came through Tennessee, which is why Johnny Smith is my guy.
right.
I really like that Corey Davis pick. However, I'm always afraid of how many touches Derrick Henry takes away.
Mhm.
Do you think that that might stop his production? Do you fear that he get? Let me put it like this: on let's say he goes off this week and he has a
Mhm.
really big pop game. Do you think he goes over or under 2 touchdowns?
Over.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, over. I think it's over because they look to target him in the red zone. Like it was very soothing and also breathtaking just to see them like dial up plays for him in the red zone. I think his touchdown that he had was a red zone touchdown. Back of the end zone, Tannehill put it right on a rope. back in the end zone. It was really dope to see, but also, I might be pushing it when I say over. I might say like 2.5 touchdowns or something. But yeah, I definitely see he can get me two. But I see what you're saying as far as Derrick Henry. But like I said before, if this past week was his floor game and he only had like 3 catches, but he had a touchdown and he still put up gave you a decent outage, I'll take that as my flex. And that's with Derrick Henry getting 30 plus carries. Now what he did with that, that's a whole nother story. But they try to see. It seems like they have like a balanced attack where they know they can't just rely on Derrick Henry. They have to be able to just push the ball downfield. They have to be able to capitalize in red zones. And they almost got upset by the team that we thought was tanking, the Jags. So that's interesting to say. I really like the question there. So let's go to the last position. Are we doing defense for this one? And if
Um,
we and
yeah, we're doing defense for sure, and I think that my pick starting out with is one of the best defenses in the league so far. They've been able to consistently produce. They've been hitting the quarterback, and they've been protecting the air and the ground. They've been doing a really good job everywhere. And they're
mhm.
going against a team that's 31st in offense right now in the Houston Texans.
Oh
And
wow.
we're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. I like the Texans. I think they have all of the pieces. I love Deshaun Watson. I like Brandon Cooks. I like Will Fuller, especially when he's not hurt like right now.
Mhm.
I don't see them producing right now. I haven't seen them do it all year. And until I see them do it, I can't think that they're going to do it. So I'm going to go with the Steelers and I'm going to bet against them.
Mm, 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 mm. Deshaun, I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry you got to deal with this. I'm sorry you got to run for your life. I'm sorry that Bill O'Brien doesn't do a better job of surrendering his ego so he can get the ball out of your hands quicker and faster and just to rely on David Johnson more. I'm sorry that they don't got an offensive line to protect you. I'm sorry that they let go of D Hop. Like, I'm just sorry, but I
D
cannot be
Hop
mad at
and the left tackle that they gave up within the last couple of years, Brown to
Brown.
Seattle,
Seattle.
that changed their entire offensive line. They already were missing pieces, and him going away just kind of took away any protection that he could have relied on.
Gut punch. And speaking of gut punch, the Steelers defense is for real, ladies and gentlemen. And I know they had like a little showing against Jeff Driscoll, who came in, and when they thought they were going to get Drew Lock, he got hurt. Prayers up to Drew Lock. Hopefully, he have a speedy recovery. But Steelers defense, I really, really like them this week. My defense, I know they just got torched, but I'm counting and banking on Bill Belichick to come out and say, look, let's look at this film and see why Russ is like this. And if I have to just be honest with y'all, Russell Wilson is not Derek Carr, and Derek Carr is not Russell Wilson. You have talking about Derek Carr later in the topic when you have uh you have your special segment for everybody. But listen, now I'm taking the Patriots as my defense. They're rating at $3,200 this week on DraftKings. They're playing at New England. Now, if it was at in Las Vegas, I would be kind of nervous. But it's at New England. You got a West Coast team traveling to the East Coast early in the afternoon. You already know how I feel about that. Yeah, that's tough, especially after a Monday night game. So that's a quick turnaround, anyways. Now, I understand, like the Patriots, they are ranked third in the NFL. Peep this stat on me. They're ranked third in the NFL with points per game allowed, with 34.4 points per game. That's supremely high for it to be third. And we talked to you about all the other crazy defenses that have been in the league, but that's right around their average. The Raiders average as far as points that they score. In fact, they scored 34 in both of their games. So I can see the Patriots holding them under that. Maybe get an interception, maybe get two, maybe a defensive touchdown. They got one
I was
last
just
week.
going to say, I think that they might have a defensive touchdown pretty easily against that team. Uh,
Or
that team offensively does not. They've been producing the last couple of weeks. We also got to pay attention to the teams that they've been going against and how those teams go against the pass.
Mhm.
I think that the first 2 weeks, and now that people have tape, I don't think that he's going to continue that trend.
They've went against the Panthers at Carolina, and they played at home against the Saints. You already told me how you feel about the Saints and their pass defense, and you're not really as high as them as everybody says that they are. But yes, I do agree with you that now that they have tape, that's why I'm banking on Bill Belichick. I'm banking on Bill Belichick.
I
Awesome
don't
job
think
with
that that's a bad pick. I think that's a really good pick. It's hard to vote against Bill Belichick because that man can produce, and
he
he's shown
can.
that over and over again.
With the salary of everything that's going down with those defenses right there, there's a lot of defenses that make me worried. Like, I'm not really trusting you this week. It's a lot of tough matchups in there, but in this battle of a team that's 2-0 versus a team that just took a loss to Let Me Cook Russ, I think that they bounce back. And yeah, I'm super stoked for everybody to see these teams. Let us know how y'all feel about our teams. Comment. Let us know in the comments below whose team would you rather go with. If you have any picks that we've missed, shout us out. Let us know. If you have any submissions, send it to us on the Fantasy Vibes email, and you can also hit us up on our Twitter at Fantasy Vibes and our IG at Fantasy Vibes as well for more in-depth commentary. Nomi, great job as always. And we're off to our next segment. Put me in, coach. Yo, it's Mo Vibes and it's Nomi the Homie back again. Fantasy Vibes, episode 1. And this is a special segment that I like to call Put Me In, Coach, where we give you deep sleepers, and players that you just need to put in your lineup this week because we just predict that they're going to go crazy for you and maybe win you a matchup this week. So I'll start with myself first, and then we'll pass it to Nomi, and then we'll go back to me. So, number one, Christian McCaffrey got hurt this week, which is unfortunate. And he's dealing with an injury that is kind of brutal for running backs to come back from. Um, I want him to be productive, but in his place, he has Mike Davis, Carolina Panthers. Now, Mike Davis, if you don't remember him, he went to South Carolina. He's 27 right now, still pretty young, 220, 5'9", real short, stocky back. He was actually drafted in the fourth round, pick 126. He's owned in 7% of Yahoo leagues and only 1% in ESPN. I'm giving you a deep sleeper here. Now, we know that C-Mac was pushed out with an ankle injury against Carolina. He's expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks. Now, if he misses 4 to 6 weeks, Mike Davis becomes the top option in that backfield. And actually, last game in garbage time, he caught 8 passes in the fourth quarter of that game. Now, that's a PPR workload already. Now, we should just assume that he should have a strong workload, especially since head coach Matt Rule said in recent reports that he actually had one of the best training camps of any Panthers player. So don't sleep on Mike Davis. Mike Davis, tell him, talk to him, put me in, coach.
I don't doubt that at all. Mike Davis has the ability, and he's shown like consistency and the ability to run the ball over and over again in the last few years. I just feel like he's always maintained that backup role. Um, Panthers are a good team that know how to run the ball. I think that he's definitely going to be able to produce the next couple of weeks. Although they're really going to be missing Christian McCaffrey. Um,
Absolutely.
One of the sleepers that I was looking at was N'Keal Harry, a wide receiver for the New England Patriots. Now, this man is absolutely ridiculous. This dude is tall and has hands like ridiculousness, and he's able to catch the ball and run with it and avoid defenders consistently. With a team like the New England Patriots right now, who are able to produce on offense but aren't overly producing like they have in the past, I think that Cam Newton, a new quarterback for them, is going to look for somebody that he has a connection with, and I think that that's going to end up being N'Keal Harry. I think that they're going to be able to make a connection, pass the ball consistently well to each other, and even though he hasn't quite had that big pop game yet, I expect him to have a really good season in general.
So you keep him on your roster, keep him on your bench. You You start him this week. What's your advice to the fantasy owners out there?
I think I'd keep him on the bench if I have somebody to play. So if I don't have anyone to play, especially this week when they're going against a weak Las Vegas defense, uh, I'd be interested in putting him in and seeing what he could do in a deeper league. However, in our league that we play, it's just a 10-person league, and um, I do like him, but not quite enough to start him yet, but definitely enough to keep him on my bench so nobody else could pick him up.
Yes. Hey, Nikhil Harry, put me in, coach.
Put me
Oh,
in, coach.
hey, next we have uh a new pickup today. It's breaking news. Devontae Freeman actually signed with the New York Giants in place of they needed some help. Saquon Barkley is out for the year with the ACL injury. Prayers up to Saquon, man. I've been feeling long and hard that the Giants kind of just sabotage you by not trying to place the proper offensive line on you, and then wasting your prime years by not blocking for you. So they picked up Devontae Freeman, 5'8", another short back, 28, still young. But at the same time, he's at the back half out of Florida State. He's rostered in 14% of leagues, 8% of ESPN leagues, 14% out of Yahoo. He's rapidly rising because of the new acquisition. And they actually signed him to a 1 year, $3 million contract on Tuesday. Now, the fantasy impact of this, as expected, he's going to replace Saquon for this year, and he is expected to practice on Wednesday and could play as soon as Week Three's matchup against the 49ers. Now, Devontae turned down more money from other teams because he likes the opportunity with the Giants the best, said his agent Drew Rosenhaus. The 28-year-old logged 656 rushing yards along with 59 receptions and 410 receiving yards, 6 total touchdowns over 14 games for the Falcons in 2019. Now, Freeman will eventually take over the Giants' backfield and should be added immediately off the waiver wire in all league formats. Just put him on your bench and just see what he does. Worst case scenario, he can come in and be a flex for you, maybe even RB2, depending on the situation. Hey, Devontae Freeman, put me in, coach. Up next to Naomi.
I think that's a really great pick. I really like Devontae Freeman. I think he's consistently produced in the past, and I think he looks at this as an opportunity to show who he is and how he can be great without that pass happy type of offense that he was just filling in the gaps for when he was on a successful ish Atlanta team.
He's so
The next
successful.
person I wanted to look at is kind of a deeper sleeper, and like I think would work better for those of you in those deeper leagues. And I'm talking about Cole Beasley, who's a wide receiver for Buffalo right now. He's bounced around the league a little bit, and I think that we all remember seeing him in a Cowboys jersey. But we can guarantee one thing from him, and that's consistency. For the first two games, he's put up 4 receptions and 50 yards in each game, which isn't really that big of a deal right now. But if you think about that in a fantasy type of way and you try to think about how touchdowns can affect that, since he doesn't have touchdowns yet, it doesn't look good. But with those same stats, if he had 2 touchdowns in those games, people would be freaking out.
Yes.
So you got to be looking at those players, and you're going to get a good game out of him anytime he gets into the end zone. So you just kind of got to hope that that's going to happen. And I don't doubt that it's going to happen with a strong-minded player like Cole Beasley.
Cole Beasley. Put me in, coach.
Put me in, coach.
Hey, with the deep sleeper, I give you a deep sleeper that I have my eyes on for really since training camp. I've been seeing really dope reports out of Washington with tight end Logan Thomas, who's currently in DraftKings. He's going for a price of 3,700, and they play Cleveland. And what intrigues me about Logan Thomas, I'm gonna read you the stats. It's 8 receptions, 63 yards, 31 yards per game, 1 touchdown, only 10.2 fantasy points per game. Right? Not doesn't sound really appealing. However, when I mentioned that Cleveland ranks 32nd against tight ends, it's like ooh. When I mentioned that they actually allow 34 points a game, ooh. When I mentioned also that last week Logan Thomas caught 4 out of 9 targets. It's not about how many he caught, but look at the targets. He's getting the ball thrown to him. Last week he had like 10 targets. This week he has like 9. Even though he only had 26 yards, they're making an emphasis to try to get him the rock and try to feed him. Now Dwayne Haskins again looked for his tight end like often, but they just wasn't on the same page just yet. I think that with time, patience, and a little bit of magic, they can get on the same page. Now it's encouraging. Now to correct myself, he's has 17 targets through 2 games. And he could find success in week 3 against the Browns defense that just let CJ Uzama and Drew Sample combine for 11 catches, 87 yards, and a whole TD. I
The
see.
tight end is really a young quarterback's best friend too. When you is like when I was talking about Justin Herbert, you can't trust a younger quarterback to be able to produce in the future.
Mhm.
So Justin Herbert was able to complete those short passes, and a lot of those were to people like Hunter Henry over the middle. So look for their running backs and their tight ends to definitely be getting a lot more attention for sure.
Logan Thomas. Put me in, coach. Put
Put
me
me
in.
in, coach.
So the last one that I get, and I think we both agreed on this one, is we talked about my Atlanta Falcons earlier and or a little bit later, depending on when you watch the segment, but he's been eating lately. Rostered in 23% of Yahoo leagues, 20% of ESPN leagues. Russell Gage. Now, he scored this past week. He caught 6 of 9 targets for 46 yards and 1 touchdown in a loss against the Cowboys. Now, the fantasy impact of this is now through 2 games, it looks like Russell Gage is a thing in Atlanta's passing game, and even he found a niche. And then when it seems like it's too many mouths to feed, he's been craving out a role with this team. He's drawn at least 9 targets in consecutive games to open up the year. That's important. Now, Gay should be rostered in all fantasy formats. It does not matter your league size 10, 8, 12, 16. It doesn't matter. He should get some type of spot on your roster. Now, his stat line 15 receptions, 160 yards, 1 touchdown on a robust 21 targets through the first 21 games, the first 2 games of the season. And with Matt Ryan airing it out relentlessly, Gage should have plenty of weekly flex appeal moving forward. Russell Gage, I think me and both know me agree. Put me in, coach.
I completely agree. And one of the statistics that you brought up that I wanted to talk more about is the 21 targets that he received. That is one target less than Calvin Ridley, who's leading the league in yards right now, or
Exactly.
tied for leading the league in yards right now. And also, we're looking at somebody who's able to consistently perform and consistently getting those targets. Uh, that team has great wide receivers, and when you try to take away Julio Jones, and soon with the amount of effort that they're going to put into trying to take away their number 2 in Calvin Ridley, I definitely see Russell Gage finding his gap over the middle in between the linebackers and cutting it upfield.
I love Russell Gage for not only this offense but for this team. Uh, Ever since he got here out of LSU, he's been somebody that our coaching staff has been extremely high on. When Mohamed Sanu was here, it was harder for him to crave out a role because of just the depth. But now that he's not there anymore, he is flourishing. I don't know if anybody's watched the game, but those that watched the Falcons game this past week know that Russell Gage was in the Wildcat, and they ran actually 2 plays for him in the Wildcat, and he threw a deep ball on the money to Julio Jones, who dropped it two yards away from the touchdown. If he completed that pass, he would have got that +6 when it comes to the quarterback for passing touchdowns. So you gotta just be aware. They use him in a lot of different ways. And a special teams guy that has made a more and craved out a role deeper than just special teams, and now he's an intricate part of the offense. I really love it. Russell Gage, put me in, coach. And on this special segment, think that is it, and that's all we have for you. Check out the waiver wire, especially today. It's some deep sleepers in there. And if you have anybody that you think is a deep sleeper, make sure you put it in the comments down below to help your fellow mates. It's time to win. We need championships to be won this year. For Moon Vibes and Omi, this is Put Me In, Coach, and we're off to the next segment.
All right, this part of the show is called I'm Locked Up, and this is where we talk about players that are way too good for you to drop right now, but definitely not good enough for you to start right now, depending on the situation that they're in. Uh, Now, the first person I'm going to talk about, I'll probably get some flack from Moon over here for that, but I'm going to talk about Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is going against
What?
the league leader in defense in Baltimore. They're able to stop the run and they're able to stop the pass. They're a good defensive team. Uh, I don't think that they're going to be able to stop him completely. It's kind of impossible to say that anybody could, but I think that they'll be able to restrain him enough for them to get the win over him and for him to not necessarily produce for them, for the Chiefs, and particularly in fantasy football.
Patrick Mahomes, we can't let you out the bench this week. I'm locked up, and we not letting you out. According to Sonomi, I guess up next is another quarterback, and it's crazy because they actually played each other in the first game of the season. I'm going with Deshaun Watson. I'm sitting him. I'm not letting you out of my bench this week. He sits at the QB 15 on the season right now, and certainly not the type of production you would like to see from a player who owned the top 5 ADP at his position during draft time. Now, all you have no choice but to keep chugging along with Deshaun Watson and match up against the NFL's second ranked total defense is certainly less than appealing, way less than appealing. Especially with this top wideout Will Fuller continue to deal with hamstring ailments, which is like kind of discouraging at this point. Deshaun Watson has gotten off to a bit of a slow start this season. I can be honest and say that it's a part of play calling, but also a part of just him missing Nuke Hopkins. Like, just to be honest, that's his safety blanket. Through 2 weeks, he's passed for 528 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. And he is 0-2 with losses to the Chiefs and the Ravens. Now, those are two strong teams, and we still have to have cause for pause or cause for concern. Watson has no longer has the D Hop, and it doesn't seem like they're making a concerted effort to get David Johnson the ball and get him the ball often. His touchdown passes actually went to tight ends that he has on the year, Jordan Akins and Darren Fells. He has another tough matchup this week in Week 3 when he travels to Pittsburgh, and they had a strong defensive showing against the Broncos and against the Giants. Now, more of a strong performance against the Giants than they did against the Broncos, but their defense still helped them win that game. Now, defensive front is one of their strengths. One of the Texans' weaknesses is their offensive line. I just don't think that he will be able to get anything on the ground. And I think that that will equal to a lot of sacks. And I'm leaving Deshaun Watson on my bench this week, and I'm not taking you out. Deshaun Watson, you're locked up, and we're not letting you out this week. I'm back to no.
I think Deshaun Watson's a great pick for this. He's a great player, but that offense hasn't produced that all this year, and until they do, you can't really trust it. Um, the last people I was going to talk about is the just about anybody on offense in Denver.
Jeez.
Denver offensively has been having trouble moving the ball. That team is has always had a lot of pieces that can help them be good, but they haven't been able to be as good as they were when they had Peyton Manning, to be completely honest. Um, Now we have Jerry Jeudy and Melvin Gordon, who are incredibly good offensive players. But I think that the thing that we need to see before we can see them actually produce is a quarterback that's actually comfortable in playing the position. And I don't think we can see that yet in Denver.
So I'm gonna. Is Drew Lock the guy to lead their franchise? I
We
know
don't
I
know
just put
enough
you on the
about him
spot,
to know
but
that he can actually produce.
is Jeff Driscoll the guy to replace him?
No, I, I was really surprised when they didn't get one or two quarterbacks this offseason.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the people that were available, we're talking about people like Cam Newton, Teddy Bridgewater,
Absolutely,
Marcus Mariota. Like
absolutely.
these are decent players, and they can both run and pass the ball well. So the fact that Denver didn't pick up any of those players means that they're believing a lot in Drew Lock, which puts a lot of faith in him. Uh, I need to see him prove that before we can start playing the other people in that offense, because until he can consistently highly produce, the rest of that offense is kind of locked up.
And we not letting you out. All right, I
No,
gotta
they're
ask you
not.
one more question. One more question, and it has to do with the Broncos. So I know you said Will. I know you said Jerry Judy and Melvin Gordon, but does this even include Noah Fant? Like I gotta sit Noah Fant too.
I don't know if it includes Noah Fant as well, because like we were talking about with younger quarterbacks, they love the tight end. They love the tight end. They love checking it down to them because the tight end is almost always their safe go-to. They're
Hmm.
running a short out, a short curl over the middle, and finding a gap between linebackers. You can trust your tight end over and over again to be there for the short passes and turn and run upfield. And I think that in a PPR league, when those receptions matter more than in what formerly was known as standard leagues,
Hmm.
I think that we see that those receptions add up to enough points to make up for the yardage that they're not going to be getting.
Powerful text from Nomi. Nomi and Moon Vibes. This special segment called I'm Locked Up, and players that we are not letting off of our bench this week, but we cannot drop them from our roster. Um, we'll we on to the next segment, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around Mahomes right now, man. Monday Night Football, I gotta wrap my head around that. We off to the next segment.
This is No Phony with Nomi. This is the part of the show where I'm going to talk about a couple of players that I'm not quite sold on yet. Uh, these are players that I think are decent players, but also you need to understand that they are playing to their format or their system a little bit more, or also they just aren't that good and they've shown that in their plays, but they haven't screamed it, if that makes sense. And I think that that makes a little more sense when we start with my number one pick, Derek Carr. Derek Carr statistically this year is doing pretty all right. He's looking at about 73% of his passes completed. He's able to complete 4 total touchdowns. But let's look a little bit further into those plays, or specifically one play that he had when he had a touchdown in week one that he completely botched by throwing it way too short. He could have taken the ball and thrown it anywhere but where he did, and it probably would have been done a little bit better. So in this game, he is trying to throw a deep crossing route, and he, instead of leading the wide receiver into the wide open end zone, ends up throwing it short. The wide receiver has to cut down, come back, and get the ball, and has to change direction to head towards the goal line. By the time they get to the goal line, they're getting smacked. Derek Carr has done this since he was in college. He leads his wide receivers into safety. He doesn't protect his players, and his players don't like that in response. There's a reason why teams like that go out and get people like Marcus Mariota. It's because they're looking for a different option. The next person that I'm going to talk about, it's not because he hasn't performed. It's because it's too early for us to look at this success as good success, and that's Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert in his first game completed a decent amount of passes, had a decent percentage, but when you dive a little bit deeper than that, you kind of notice a trend. Uh, I think it was a total of 17 passes that were under 10 yards in completion. So he dink and dunked that entire game. I definitely see some potential in the way that he ran the triple option, particularly in the in the red zone. And I think that he has the ability to stretch the field in other ways than Philip Rivers ever could for that team. However, to think that he is going to be taking over the starting job for Tyrod Taylor is a little bit, it's jumping the gun. He's not ready to do that, and I believe the team showed that they don't believe that he's able to do that in the amount of long passes that they gave him, which was two, and one of them was at the end of the half. The last dude I'm going to talk about is an incredibly talented dude who has all of the tools to be one of the greatest wide receivers in the league, but I don't think he's there yet. And I think that people are overhype on him right now based on his production in the first 2 weeks, and that's Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley has all the pieces, but you also have to realize how much the defense is focusing on taking Julio Jones out and how that opens up the field for him. Also, in fantasy production, what we aren't looking at is how much touchdowns have affected his score. If we're looking at a top tier wide receiver without without the touchdowns that he scored 21 and 17 points. While those are good games, those aren't giant pop games like people would call them. Those touchdowns definitely mean a lot, but I don't think that he's going to be able to produce 2 touchdowns a game consistently all year. So I think that being so high on him and taking him into the grave as the GOAT right now is jumping the gun a lot. And yeah, so those are the 3 players that I chose are on the cusp of being phonies this year, so we got to look out for them.
Okay, let's just be real here on Reel1's Productions. Josh Allen looks like he's in the MVP running right now. He's been on fire to start the season so far. He's thrown over 700 yards, 6 touchdowns, 0 picks. Yeah, you heard that right, 0 picks. That's kind of unheard of, especially for a QB that has an average of 57.7 completion percentage and 21 interceptions in his career. That's just the numbers, ladies and gents. But if we sweep past the past away and ask the NFL guys to erase the memory of past performances and allow me to focus on this year alone, I would look at his stats and say, oh, wow, where did this guy come from? This guy has a height of 6'5", 237, age 24, and he's from Wyoming. You mean the same Wyoming that houses Kanye's Twitter rants? The same Wyoming that I forgot was a state in our country for the early years of my life? With the mascot of the Cowboys and not referring to America's dysfunctional team? Small school with a big name who Buffalo drafts when, in my thinking, that fan base would have much more wanted Lamar Action Jackson. In reality, Wyoming has his first top 10 pick ever. But think about that draft class for a second. Here's some notable players that got drafted before Josh Allen. Baker Mayfield, Saquon Barkley, Sam Darnold, Denzel Ward, Bradley Chubb, Quentin Nelson. If my memory was still erased and I only went off of what I've seen so far in these first 2 weeks of the NFL season, Josh Allen is playing better than every other draft pick selected before him. There's a lot of people who still have beef with those selections because they weren't prime cuts in their eyes. Speaking of beef, it's about to get salty. Let's take a trip down memory lane. May 2018, Jalen Ramsey tweeted Josh Allen and said, he's a pick waiting to happen. Fast forward a little bit, August 2018, Ramsey calls the Bills Ricky trash in the now infamous GQ Q&A in which he rated nearly every NFL quarterback. He had this to say about Josh Allen, and I quote, I think Bills draft pick Josh Allen is trash. I don't care what nobody says. He's trash. And it's going to show too. That's a stupid pick to draft to me. We play them this year, and I'm excited to tell. I hope he's their starting quarterback. He played at Wyoming. Every time they played a big school, like they play Iowa State, which is not a big school in my opinion because I'm with the Florida State. He threw 5 interceptions, and they lost by a couple of touchdowns or something like that. He never beat a big school. Josh Allen later responded saying, he's not on my team. He's not my teammate. It doesn't bother me. Fast forward some time, November 2018, Ramsey calls the Bills sideline trash during the Jags loss to Buffalo. He paid respect to Allen, but the Bills Mafia trolled Jalen by quoting his same exact tweet and I mentioned earlier saying this tweet didn't age well. February 2019, Josh Allen autographs a photo saying, am I still trash to Jalen Ramsey? Although it was a Bills fan who actually requested that Josh Allen write that message, it's still pretty great. February 2019, Ramsey responds on Twitter. Yes. Capital Y, yes. on referencing if he was still trash. Josh Allen has played two weak defenses in the New York Jets and the Miami Dolphins. This week, he faces his first true test against the Rams, who have the same stud that not only just got paid handsomely, but also called your boy Josh Allen trash. I don't think he was talking about regular trash either. I think he was talking about dumpster juice. The Rams, who have given up the seventh fewest points to opposing quarterbacks this season, have started 2-0 in a division where Arizona and Seattle look like their competition, and San Francisco is more nicked up than Madison Square Garden. I could make the argument that LA needs this win more than Buffalo does. And then when you factor in the cross country trip yet again, it's an interesting dynamic. But peep this stat. The Rams have also allowed only one passing touchdown and no more than 266 passing yards so far. Carson Wentz, who played the Rams this past weekend, had a stat line of two interceptions, 242 yards, with a QB rating of 56.5. Last week, for Josh Allen, his stats look like this: 24 for 35, 68.6 completion percentage, 417 yards, 11.9 complete yards per pass, four touchdowns, zero picks. Now we know that the Miami Dolphins defense is not the LA Rams. We get that. For Josh Allen, it'll be star wide receiver Stephon Diggs' first big test as a Bill going up against All-Pro cornerback Jalen Ramsey, while the Bills' offensive line will have to work and cut out double team after double team after double team for Aaron Donald. Allen is a week 3 matchup that is destined to leave you guys disappointed. Vostradamus predicts Josh Allen will have two touchdowns, two picks, and one of those interceptions will come from the same guy that called him trash. And not just regular trash, dumpster juice trash. I don't even know where to start with. I don't know what take was bolder. Derek Carr, Justin Herbert. I'm not even going to mention Calvin Ridley because I got a bone to pick with you. I really, really, really got a bone to pick with you. But
Oh
let's
man,
start
I
with
thought you were gonna get up and walk away when I said Calvin Ridley.
yes, yes. I don't even want to talk about him right now. When we talk about Slide Red, let's talk about Derek Carr. Although I agree with you, I really agree with you because you know that Henry Ruggs ball, like we talked about it, could have been way upfield. He had to slow down. He could have laid it on him more to and that would have been a touchdown. I trust Henry Ruggs' speed, to get in there. He shouldn't be getting caught by who was the safety on that play? Who made the tackle? Can't remember the name of the safety.
I don't remember honestly, but that I think that matters less. I think that throw needs to be on target, especially from like somebody like Derek Carr. We're looking at somebody who's been in the league for a few years now, somebody that was a high pick, somebody that's expected to be like one of the goats, somebody that's supposed to be better than
the
that.
goat.
I mean, when the Raiders drafted him, that was the intention, wasn't it? Like they thought that this kid was the next coming. Like
He
they thought that
kind of is
so
living
much
up to
more.
that. No, he's kind of living up to that. Honestly, I saw a stat during Monday night, and I don't know how many touchdowns he's away, but he's in the ballpark of being in the Raiders league and team history of most touchdown passes. That has to vouch for something. So does that mean that even though you're gonna talk trash about him, he might be go down as one of the greatest Raiders quarterbacks ever?
Can you think of anybody that anybody considers the greatest whose teammates don't like him? And if you lead
So
your wide receivers into safeties, do you think they like you?
I
He's been
mean,
doing
after
it
they
since in
went,
college, bro. If you pull up his college tapes at Fresno State, which I've done, and I think that if you watch consistently when he throws his seam routes and his fade routes on the outside, he consistently leads the wide receiver into a spot where they can catch the ball, but a second later they're going to get their lights knocked out.
mm,
And I don't think any wide receiver likes that in a quarterback.
I can agree with that. They don't like medicine balls. They really don't like medicine balls. Balls is gonna put you in a concussion protocol. So concussion protocol balls. Um, we're gonna agree to disagree because I mean I agree mostly with their take about him and his ball placement, his accuracy. It could be better, more than life to be desired. But um,
I
I give
completely
you.
agreed with what you were saying about Josh Allen too. Like
Let's get into Josh Allen. Let's talk
his,
about it.
you're right. It's completely the defenses that he's going against. Like, yeah, he's producing and he's doing something well, and he's consistently coming up with the balls, but he's not doing it in a good way. He's
Mhm,
not. He's playing well against bad teams,
mhm.
and just about anybody who's an average quarterback in the NFL can do that.
Do you
So,
think? Do you think Josh Allen is? We talked about him being an MVP candidate. We talked about him being garbage juice. This is not my words, but it kind of is. But I mean, Jalen Ramsey called him trash. I mean, I'm just adding on to it. But if we look at the grand scheme of things in this year alone, do you think because their schedule is tougher and it gets tougher down the end of the road, do you think that their record in will reflect him being at that MVP status? Because you know a lot of times it's about stats and everything, but it's also about like records. Do you think
yeah,
that those two are correlate?
absolutely. I hear what you're saying, and I completely agree. I think if you want somebody to be an MVP, they have to have minimum 10 wins.
Hmm.
And I think that that's kind of looking at the upper end of what Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills are looking at doing this year. I think that they're hopefully stretching for that 10 win, maybe 11 win season. But they also need to go against the Patriots. And the Patriots have been holding that division spot for such a long time. So at this point, they either need to outperform the Patriots, which good luck with that, or they need to hit a wild card spot and they're going to go through more games and be more beat up in the process.
You know what? I agree with you. And one thing that I don't agree with you on is Calvin Ridley. But at the same time, I'm not even gonna go in on you. I'm not. I'm not because this segment will be literally 50 minutes. Because I'm not gonna stop. Everybody that saw my reaction, you saw my reaction. Do you know how
I
I feel about it?
I
You know
definitely
how I
saw
feel
your
about it.
reaction. And like I said, I think he has all of the tools to be successful. But with someone like Matt Ryan throwing the ball, who's a perpetually average quarterback for about a decade now, you can't really trust a wide receiver's production. It's not going to be consistent. And you can
No me,
even
no
see it
me,
in
no
their
me, no.
past. Like Julio Jones has really big games and then he really doesn't. They can't be consistent in the air, and until they can be consistent in the air, he can't be consistent.
They've been consistent in their air ever since he came into the league last year.
He's been
He
consistent in the air, but the team hasn't.
the team has always been a team that's really been, if anything, we've been consistent in the air more than we've been consistent with the run game.
I
That's the
feel
only.
that.
That's
But
all. That's the
also,
only.
you need consistency in the run game to continue to produce while passing the ball. Your
I agree with
offense
that
needs to move
wholeheartedly.
consistently. And if you're relying on the pass game for the first two games, that number two wide receiver looks really good statistically. Because if you're relying on the pass game for the first time in years when they don't have their running backs in the backfield now and they're trying to look to new options, they are probably looking at trying to pass the ball more and switching to more of an air raid pass happy offense. And in the first 2 weeks of that, you've seen that and you're more comfortable with it. We all know Todd Gurley is not getting the touches that he should be right
Let's talk about something that we didn't mention. Calvin Ridley is a hell of a route runner.
now. Yeah,
So anybody that's
true.
guarding up against
Absolutely.
him is barbecue chicken because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to keep up with him. The reason why Julio Jones is not as productive as everybody says is because they roll coverage to him almost all the time. So at this point, the defense goes in and says, "Okay, who do we need to stop? Okay, we need to stop number 11." So he does eat off of that, but at the same time, he's able to win against man coverage, zone coverage. He's smart enough to know how to be able to run routes in both of those situations. I trust Calvin Ridley. Calvin, if you happen to see this, bro, slide red, bro. Listen. We ain't listening to nothing know me saying. We I see you getting over 10 plus touchdowns. You already halfway there, almost. I don't think
Another
you will
thing
be. Go ahead.
Another thing that you have to look out for, though, with former Alabama players is their
Oh
injury
gosh.
rate. Alabama
Okay.
players consistently get hurt after they get into the league. And
This
I
is a
think
fact.
And I think that it has a lot to do with how hard they work to maintain the position that they have to maintain in that high caliber football team in college. So
They
when they
overwork
get
their
into the
players.
league, they're able to maintain their body, but it's not they're not able to protect themselves from injury as much because of the wear that those years had. Do you think that he will be able to escape that injury bug long term?
Long term, absolutely, because I trust him being able to take care of his body, and even if he is injured, I think it's something not severe, like ACLs. No, I'm not. I'm not. I don't see that. But if anything, if I'm looking at Julio's, it was a previous indicator of what can happen with Calvin. A lot of it could be like a lot of hamstring or a lot of foot injuries or things like that, like little tweaky injuries that just don't make any sense. But it's just like, hey, but Julio pushes through it all the time. We just don't give him enough credit. Like, he wasn't supposed to be playing in that game on Sunday, but yet he did. Do I see Calvin really getting 2 touchdowns a week? No. However, I still do see him being productive, and you need to put respect on Matt Ryan's name. Please put respect on Matt Ryan's name,
I'll bring some
please.
statistics next time so I can add him to our phony list. How's that?
Yes, it sounds wavy. Um,
All right. So, do you have anything to say about Justin Herbert and the way that I
no,
talked about that? Do you agree,
no,
disagree?
no. I don't. I agree with him being not as over. I don't. I'm not ready to hype on the hype train. I'm not ready to hop on it. I'll be at the port. I'll be at the dock, just waiting. Even if the train passes me by, I'll be cool with it. But I'm not. I feel like you really put that eloquently and well. So I actually agree with you on that point. We talked about that off air, but I do agree with you on that point. And I think that's the last thing we had to talk about, besides you try to go against Calvin Ridley.
We have a
But yeah,
lot to talk about there. I don't think you're going to give that one up for a while.
I'm never giving that up. No, no, I'm not. Yeah, but hey, if there's any Josh Allen fans that are mad, hey, fight me in the comments and send us your questions and everything that you want to get answered to our Instagrams at Supermoon Vibes, at Know Me the Homie, on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere you find us. And be sure to connect with us. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. We really appreciate it. Appreciate you making it this far. Peace, love, and abundance to you, your family, and everybody that you're close to. Stay safe, stay quarantine clean. And for Nomi and Moon Vibes, we are signing off on this debut premiere episode of Fantasy Vibes, exclusively on YouTube.